Okay, so this is a video on how to replace the power steering motor bushing, damper, I don't know what it's called, this little thing, on a CT200H. There's a good video out there about how sometimes just tightening the bolts on the steering stem don't do it, and you need to get in there and replace this. So first off, this is the new part. Okay, here's the old one. Let me move this over here. So you can see the new one has the green sandwich in the middle all the way around. Here's the old one. You can see that there's 2 or 3 of the teeth left that have the green sandwich, but for the most part, all those pieces are in here. You can see them all stuck around the motor housing. So I'm gonna do this video backwards because I've got it all apart. I had to figure it all out on my own. The gentleman that did the other video kind of cut to the chase. So I thought, well, I'm gonna reassemble this thing and do a video. So the first thing I'll tell you is, this is the motor housing, and when you get it back in the car, will point up. And the motor itself is this cylinder back here, and it goes in here. So it'll go in this, and then it'll be pointed up, and it'll be up. This is gonna be hard to focus. There's a recess up there where those red wires go. And I'm not a good camera person here. The main problem I had was dropping that whole thing down. There's this red wire, you can see it up there with the yellow on the top of the motor. That thing is pretty much hanging by that, and I hope I haven't screwed it up. Let me focus there. By doing this, but I couldn't find a good way to get it out. I'm sure now that I've got it apart, maybe I could look up from the top. But, so basically the first thing I'm gonna do is clean out all these green parts, and then move the motor over here, bolt it back in. There's 2 bolts that hold it through, and I'm gonna come back in a second. Okay, so in this one I have spun the motor around. So again, here's the motor housing, there's the opening, there's some teeth. This is the end of the motor that goes in that housing. So I have put the damper on there, and so here's the damper. So I put it on there in the teeth. The little star. Okay, so I put a box under the steering column here to prop it up, and I think I've pretty much got the motor housing in there lined up. So this is one of the bolts. These are 12 millimeter. Let me double check. Right. These are 2 12 millimeters. So there's one here, and they're really long bolts. And then there's one blind on the back side. So make sure you get them. Okay, there we go. Tightening down's not easy because this whole thing is flexing everywhere in all different directions. Okay, got that one. Okay. these two will go flat, and they'll be up under here. There's 2 spots. There's a long bolt, mentioned in the original video. This is also this one's a 14 millimeter. And it's behind this whole housing thing. In fact, here you can see the hole it goes through because the hole's kind of turned sideways. So it goes through this and it goes into, the good news on the other side, when you have it lined up right, there's a, where'd it go? This. The far end of it will go into that, and there's a trapped nut. Maybe it's back here. It's a trapped nut that it threads into, so you don't have to hold the backside when you're getting it back on. But this is a 14 that goes through here, and it's behind there, and you won't be able to see it when it's in place, really. Get it off. I used a box end would do it. I've got a 14 box end, but I also have a ratcheting box, so I was able to get it out of there with that. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot this whole thing, flex it everywhere. I mean, I don't know if you can see, this is a joint, there's a joint down there. This part telescopes in and out. You know, you're pivoting the mount points. If you don't have the steering locked, the telescoping thing will go in and out. So I'm trying to get these two to line up with the 2 bolts up under here after I get the motor housing back in its far back recess and get those 2 bolts on to hold it. And then I can put, when I get those pretty close, this will be lined up and I'll put that back on. So that's the plan. Okay, I'm back. That was not as hard as I'd hoped. Let's see here. Once I got the motor, you have to get the motor under a little edge. And so now it goes back up. So this is the bottom side of the shaft. And then up above that, way back in there, is the motor housing. You can see it's kind of directly away from me. So once you get it up in there, it's pretty easy to move this up. Here's the 2 bolts. See, there's one. There's one. I've just got them on finger tight just to hold this whole thing up right now. I'm trying to give you a little better view of what I've got taken apart. So, okay, so there's the steering wheel. Like I said, I got the upper shroud housing off. I got the lower shroud off. Down there hanging over there is the knee airbag. This piece is the plastic piece that's underneath the knee airbag. Back there's a little cover that goes where the steering shaft comes out of the firewall. I took that off once. I don't know if it's necessary or not, just to give me a little room. Exit. Difficult is A, you can't see it behind this housing. The bolt's gonna be back here. And then B, when you get it all lined up, it's pretty much directly in line with this green connector, which I don't know what it does. It attaches to the brake. I didn't want to disconnect it and move it and mess with it. So I was able to, like I said, I was able to get my ratcheting 14 mil in just up and above that green thing and get it going. And once I got it hand tight, it'll pass behind the green connector once you get it loose and you can slide it out. So I did that first and then took off these 2, like I said, this and this bolt to drop the whole thing down. So to reverse, I'm going to try to finagle the wheel down like this. See, I'm moving the whole steering wheel pivot down, and that'll pivot that up. I'll try to line it back up into that and get the bolt through. So. Okay, I'm back. I got that nut tightened. Also, the near one, This is the one some people say they tighten that one and they tighten the one next to the firewall, and that removes some of their clunking. For me, that wasn't the case, so I'm going through this whole process and replacing this $10 part with a, well, this is probably gonna be a 2 or 3 hour deal by the time I'm done. Also, here I'm looking up over here. This is the housing for the steering, and above it is the cylinder of the motor. You can see where it kind of goes up into the void of the dash. So just FYI, I'm gonna get that out of here. To recap so far, I put the new star back on the motor, put the motor back in the housing, rotated the housing to where it faces straight up into the dash, got it under the little lip so it'll go up into that recess, pushed it back up in there, trapped the steering column with the 2 bolts, 2 nuts. The 2 nuts, where'd they go? Here's one over here, other one this side, and then got that bolt in the behind this housing there. I'm gonna put this little plastic shroud back on the floor of the firewall, and the next thing will be to put the knee airbag back on, so I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so I put this shroud back on the firewall. Inside of there is the other bolt that some people say they tighten and it helps them. That shroud's held on with that white plastic nut, and then there's a white plastic nut under the carpet right there. So I also wanted to say that, as the guy in the first video said, I didn't disconnect any wires or harnesses with this. Everything is still hanging. There's the knee airbag, it's hanging by the yellow wire. There's this other little thing that's hanging by a black wire. So, knee airbag. So it's that silver rectangle thing. There's a catch on this side. You can see my light. Okay. So you can see right here there's a tab. Here there's a couple smaller tabs. Down there's a post. Those go along here. So there's the dash, here's the little temperature vent. There's a catch, there's a catch, there's a catch. Posts go down there. So all those, they pop out. And like when I started this, I didn't know, and on the bottom there's these, on the bottom there's these black tabs and these fingers. Taking that off doesn't do anything. You can leave it. You just pop this whole thing out. Once you get the steering wheel shroud off, which I'll show you how I did that later, then you can access, there's 4 bolts that hold this thing. So they are, so you'll be able to see these 2, they'll be underneath the steering wheel. From once you get the steering wheel shroud off, you'll see these top 2. The bottom 2 are underneath, and you can get them as soon as you get this little plastic piece off. So I'm gonna snap it back into place, and then I'll put those 2 bolts on, and so remember all these fingers. There's sorry, I was trying to guess my tripod right, and it's slipping. Okay, so there's these fingers. So when you're inside up under the steering wheel, when you get the bottom shroud of the steering wheel off, then you can reach in here and push this tab in. The rest of them kind of just pop out as you go down. Or you can wiggle them from the bottom, push this one. You can see the top one you push down, the bottom one you kind of push in. You can reach it like from here on this side, you kind of push in, or if you have a pry tool, pry in, and it'll pop. I've got some trim piece remover tools like this that are hard plastics that I'm not going to scratch or anything. So I'm going to pop that back into place, and then I'll show you where the 4 bolts go. This is the knee airbag. I don't know if I can get far enough back to where you can see it. Let's see if I can go here. I'm just going to block everything. Okay. There's one. If I can get the bottom ones lined up, then okay, so that's the left side. Hope you could see that. And then the right side, I'm pushing the bottom one up to the top one. So pop that whole side off. Get the 2 bottoms a little higher. There we go. And then the top. Okay. So now I got that knee airbag back in place. And by the way, my other advice is make sure you have a knee pad or some kind of soft pad to put your knees on. So there's the hole in there where the bolt goes. The knee airbag is right in there, that hole. And on this side, just to the left of the steering wheel adjuster, you can see the hole there. And then underneath there, it's not this, that's where the front panel goes, but it's up under here. There's a hole. And it's up under there. It's easy to find. So, so I think the next thing is to put the steering wheel cowl on. So maybe I'll show these 2 out here. So I don't know if this is the right way, but this is the way I did it. There's the steering wheel cowl. So after I got the first thing I did was get the top leather piece off, and that snaps into, that leather piece snaps into here. And the way I got that off was, so the leather piece has this tab on it. That was into, here's the top cowl. Leather piece was in here, or that little tab was in there. So I just came in, I pushed sideways on the leather piece around here. I could, lifting that leather up a little bit, I could see that tab. So I just pushed sideways in here with this under the edge, pop that one off. Went on the other side, pop that one off. You might want to play with this one first because you don't see it as much. Like this one you see when you climb in the door, and it might be, if you mess it up. But anyway, pop that off. Then you turn the steering wheel 90 degrees, well, like this, where it's up and down. And then along the one side, there's a screw. There's 2 black screws. So one's in here. Then you rotate the steering wheel 180 the other way, where it's up and down, but the other way gives you access to this one. And then these pieces are sandwiched together. So once I got this part off, I could look in here and I could see that in here there's a couple tabs. And they just, these tabs just catch on these. So if you can, so they kind of catch like that, so that they're just inside there and then they're trapped. So what I did was I reached in from the hole I made with my, taking the leather thing off, and I just reached in there and tried to pry like that to pop both those tabs in, and did that on each side. And then there's a couple little posts And then the front was just kind of a press fit, and it had the screws. So the front was sandwiched, the front here was sandwiched kind of tight, but after I got those 2 tabs along the side from reaching in and prying them out, that popped this loose, and then I was able to wiggle it up and get it off. So that's the plan. I'm going to sandwich it back together over the top, make sure everything lines up, you know, as far as the blinkers and this. You have to get the bottom over the adjuster. You want to make sure the adjuster fits in there right before you try to snap it back on. And line up everything. And I'll sandwich that together. I'll put the screw in on each side. Make sure this is up out of the way. The leather tab. It's attached to the dash, so it stays in place. So once I get the 2 pieces sandwiched, then I'll just snap this back in place. And the last step should be to put that little kick plate back on. Okay, I'm gonna come back when I did that. Other thing on the back of it, there's the line where the 2 seams go together. There's up front. There's the screw. You can see I'm talking about you had to rotate the steering wheel to get to that screw. So that went back together pretty well. It took a while on the left side. The right side snapped easy together. The left side, I just had to play with it for a while and get it to line up, take it apart once or twice, and reseat it. But eventually it snapped in pretty good. And the blinkers aren't obstructed or anything, or the wipers. So pretty. There we go. Pretty happy with that. You can see that's the edge of the leather thing I was talking about, where you just kind of get your pry bar, little trim accessory, and pop it under there on the left side and the right side to get that leather tab out. And there's, along the top, there's those little tabs that just pop out. But then from there, you can get to inside of that housing and pop it loose. So I'm gonna put this other screw in, and then we'll do the bottom part. Okay, I put the knee airbag back on. There's 4 bolts. There's 2 up underneath, so there's one right here, and there's one up over here, and then there's 2 more that, like I said, they're easier to get to if you get the steering shroud off. You could even get to them through here, just the space under the steering wheel if you've got the steering wheel lifted up. If you look to the left and you have a long socket extension, it's a 10mm, you can get that one on the left, and then over here, see, there's one on the right back in there. So those are the only 4 things you need to get the knee airbag out. It's those 4 bolts. Like I said earlier, I tried messing with these plastic gray tabs. I pulled them over the metal tabs, but that's a waste of time. You don't need to do that. And now I gotta figure out how to get those back on. Or do I? Because the last thing to do is to put this trim piece back on. And it just screws in here. There's 2 screws. One over there, one on the left side. And it looks like it'll cover that thing, so I don't even care about those tabs. So I'm gonna put that back on, and then I'll recap. Okay, so I got it all back together. The last step is just to put this little plate on the bottom here. There's this screw here and a screw here. They're either screws, or there's also like a, maybe it's 8mm, I don't know. But so to go backwards here, so we got the whole steering wheel back in and all the pieces back on. So like the guy in the first video listed. So first thing is take the kick plate off. That's 2 screws. This pops off the bottom, it dangles by a wire. Then you want to get the knee airbag off. So you got 4 bolts. You got one in this corner, one in this corner, one up underneath, one up underneath. Okay. Then you want to get the steering shroud off. So you turn the wheel. You get to that screw there, you turn the wheel the other side, you get the other screw there. Get your trim tool, you pop off the leather piece on this side, you pop off the leather piece on the far side. That gives you access. You can get inside there to pop the 2 clips on either side of, you're right in here, to loosen them. And then the front should work its way apart too, so you can get the upper and the lower trim cowl off. That'll give you access to the steering shaft, and at that point you've got there's two bolts that stick out of the bottom, and so you get the two nuts off of there, and then along the shaft behind the motor, transmission, I don't know what it is, gearbox, is the long bolt that goes all the way through. It's a 14 millimeter. I think the two nuts that hold those on are 12 millimeters. These were, I think the knee airbags were 10 millimeter. Yeah, those were 10 millimeter. I think the two going up were 12 millimeter. The one holding the long bolt in is a 14 millimeter, but it's just the bolt itself. There's no nut you have to get off the inner side. So those three bolts, drop the whole thing down. You got to wiggle it, turn it, slide it. Somehow, eventually you get the motor to come from straight down, and then drop that whole housing over. Put a box or something underneath it to catch it, because it's just dangling on those two wires, and I can't figure out how to undo them. So when I get this thing back together, I'm gonna hope it all works right, because if I've pulled one of those wires out, I'm not gonna have power steering, I guess. So then take the motor itself off, and that was the two bolts, one on each ear. Those are 12 millimeter. Also, pull the motor off, get your old star. You can see here's my old star with the missing pieces, and there's the little teeth in there. It's got the solid star in the middle. Put the new ones in, and then start the video over and see how I put it back together. Here's all the tools I use. So yeah, 10, 12, 14, a couple screwdrivers and some pry bars, and pliers was just to get one wiring harness little clip loose, but that's it.